It was rude that you decided to move your car and not say anything, but that's fine. I'm not gonna address it anymore. If you want to talk to anybody, you can talk to my husband. I'm not gonna speak to you.
Okay. And that was the sound of a new neighbor slamming a door in my face because I asked him to not set off fireworks next to my car. Alright, it was 4th of July, I was here at home talking to some family members on the phone, and suddenly the entire front half of this house gets lit up in an instant as the entire house violently shakes. And having been born and raised in the state of New Hampshire, I've grown up around fireworks, and firearms, and things that generally go bang. But this, on this specific night, this was loud. And this was very, very close. I'm talking so close and so loud that I am genuinely surprised those front windows right there did not shatter. But it's a good thing they didn't, because that is the first place I ran trying to figure out what was happening outside my front door. And what I see is the new neighbors who had recently moved in setting off fireworks. Now I want to be clear here, I don't think that on its own is really an issue. The problem is the new neighbor is setting these off in the middle of the road about 10 to 15 feet from the front of my car. And don't jump to conclusions about me because of this, but that car happens to be a Porsche Cayenne. Now I've done several videos on this that I'll link in the description below, but about 5 years ago I bought that car as a certified pre-owned vehicle from Porsche with a 2-year unlimited mile warranty. I paid just over $20,000 for that vehicle, and even though this occurred about 2 years after me making that initial purchase, I still really like that car. I take exceptional care about it, and quite frankly, I can't get anything that does everything that does as well as it does it for anywhere near that dollar value today. Yes, it has minor dents and door dings and probably some scratches from my dogs getting in and out of the car, and even if it's nothing spectacular by today's standards, the thing is, it's still mine, it's still paid off, and I don't want anything bad happening to it. So it might be a turd, but it's my turd. So with that said, this is how my driveway aligns with the neighbor's driveway across the street. They're roughly across, but you can see they're a little bit offset. But you can also see in this clip here exactly where they were setting off all the fireworks from the debris and the burn marks in the road. And you might be thinking to yourself, okay, well maybe they just thought it wasn't going to damage anything because it's next to their driveway as well. However, there's a little bit of a problem with that theory. They had a relatively big 4th of July celebration that day. They had probably about 4 or 5 cars in their driveway, plus another 3 or 4 that were going up the road. So their driveway was pretty much filled, and there was a good amount of time throughout the day that both them and their guests were hanging out in the front of the house, really just enjoying the weather, having a couple drinks, playing some yard games, doing whatever. Which means that by being out there, they had also seen that I was working on the car and then cleaning and detailing it for about 5 hours that day. However, when they were setting off the fireworks and I rushed to the front window of my house, I quickly noticed that all the cars in their driveway had been relocated, as had all the cars that they had parked on the street that were nearby. At that point, the closest vehicle that was owned by either them or one of their guests was about 70 feet away. So if they moved more than half a dozen cars out of the way, it's fair to assume they probably knew there was a risk of damage. In that moment, I was trying to quickly gather my thoughts and figure out the best thing to do, so I really knew the following at that point, okay? Number one, I've got to get my car out of harm's way. Number two, they've got a double-digit number of people over, and number three, those people have been drinking since the early afternoon. Which means number four, that mass group of people is probably not in the best mindset to have a nice, calm, civil discussion about the damage that they're causing. What I quickly decide is that I have to immediately move my car now in case they set off more fireworks. That's the obvious course of action. But I also decide it's not worth making a scene over this, it's not worth engaging with them and that larger group immediately, and this is something that can be handled the next day. They're hosting a bunch of people, those people have been drinking and smoking, they're all standing out in front of the house to watch these fireworks go off. At this point, you have alcohol and you get a crowd mentality that is just really not a good situation to be in when you are the odd man out. So I go out, I get in my car, I don't say anything, I go and park it a few houses up on the side of the road, and as I get out and start to walk back, that is when I hear something that all but confirms that they knew exactly what they were doing. It was the loud cackle of a woman who said through her laughter, "Look, he had to move his car." And it's not just the words that she said, it's the fact that her voice was filled with joy as she said it. She was genuinely proud that they had done enough damage that it forced me to have to move my vehicle down the road. And they were not being subtle about this either. I was at least 50 feet away from them across the street and a couple houses down when I heard them saying that. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't apologetic, it was pure excitement, and they said that statement not once, but twice. So that night, I waited for their party to disperse before going and getting my car and pulling it back into my driveway. And even though it was dark out, it was not hard for me to see that my car, which again, I had spent hours earlier that day to detail, was now covered in debris, some of which was still glowing red as it rained down from above. Fast forward to the next morning, I go out to double check the damage with a little bit more light this time, and although the overnight wind took a bunch of the looser debris off my car, there was still plentiful left. Needless to say though, I was not exactly thrilled with this situation. I was a lot more angry the night before, and that's why I didn't want to make this a big deal at that time. I needed a bit of time to calm myself. So after going out and inspecting the damage that morning, I came inside for a few minutes, tried to calm down a little bit, and put together a couple thoughts of how I was going to approach this before eventually going over to their house at about 9 a.m. Now before doing this, I manually set my security camera to record in case that interaction did not go well, but that's when I tried to approach the neighbors to discuss, and here's how that went.
Hey, morning.
Morning.
Sorry, I was just like a little upset with how you guys set off the fireworks so close to my car last night.
Okay.
If you guys are just doing something like that in the future, do you mind just giving me a heads up so I can move my car beforehand?
Okay, but they were going up. They were not going anywhere near your car.
I mean, I did pull some of the debris off my car this morning. That's the only reason.
Well, if you have an issue with it, you can call your insurance, you can call your police, but it's the street, so in the future, I probably just won't do it if it's going to bother you that much.
Oh, no, well, look,
But
I have no problem with you setting them off. I just would have preferred the opportunity to move my car beforehand. That's all I'm asking.
Listen, everybody else in the neighborhood was okay with it, but if you have a problem with it, you can take it up again with other people, and then they can send me the complaint or do anything, but I don't really appreciate you coming over here and telling me how to run my house, so I'm gonna just ask you to go, and that's okay. Friendly neighborhood. It was rude that you decided to move your car and not say anything, but that's fine. I'm not gonna address it anymore. If you want to talk to anybody, you can talk to my husband. I'm not gonna speak to you.
Okay.
So let's run through this real quick, okay? 1, she admits to setting off the fireworks within city limits, which is a crime. Number 2, they did it next to my car deliberately with malicious intent. That is also a crime. Number 3, it is rude that I moved my car away from the detonating explosives without interrupting their party. Number 4, they detonated those fireworks in the middle of a public road, which is more publicly accessible and therefore higher risk, which is considered an aggravating factor to one of those aforementioned crimes. And beyond all of that, if you ignore the crime part of this for a minute, looking up from where they set these off, it is directly next to a phone pole with a transformer, as well as a host of overhead power lines. Which, ignoring the crime aspect of that for a second, is just incredibly, almost indescribably stupid. Then, to top all of that off, when asked nicely to just give me a heads up so that my property doesn't get damaged, claims that I'm somehow telling her how to run her household, explicitly tells me to call the police and file a report on crimes that, once again, they just confessed to, before saying friendly neighborhood and slamming a door inches from my face. I don't even have words for this. Like, really, I cannot even make this stuff up, okay? So how do I put this nicely? If you put this woman in a room with a hamster, I am convinced, based on this interaction, which, by the way, is the first time I have ever interacted with this neighbor, that if you put them in a closed room with a hamster, the hamster would be bringing up the average IQ of that room. Because once again, she confessed to a crime, and then instead of having an adult conversation about it and being civil, instead decides it's a smarter move to try to piss off their neighbor and to tell them to call the police and report the crime that they had committed. Does that capture it? I think that pretty much captured it. So not wanting to farther disrespect this woman, that is what I did, was appease to her request, and as I called the police and as they were driving over, suddenly her husband scurries out of the house and quickly tries to dispose of all of the expended fireworks. As you can see in this clip here, the fireworks were in plain view, sitting in their driveway moments before, which means their efforts to very suddenly and hastily try to hide them at a quite suspicious time when they believe the police are on their way might surmount to what the police refer to as evidence tampering, which, as you guessed it, is also a crime. But after a few minutes, the officer does arrive. I give him a quick rundown of the scenario. I told him about how I tried to approach this neighbor before and how they slammed the door in my face, and that if he had any questions, that I did have the security camera footage of that interaction. And I also told him in no uncertain terms that I thought this entire situation was completely insane and incredibly stupid, because literally all I'm asking for them to do is not set off explosives next to my car. Which, hey, personally seems reasonable, but what do I know? So the officer goes over, collects a few details for the report, asks them a few questions, and then he is on his way. It's a relatively short interaction. So I would have liked to have not been put in that situation in the first place, but because the wife clearly does not want to talk to me, I want to at least try to catch up with the husband at some point and say, hey, look, this is what I'm trying to do here. This is what I approached your wife and said. And honestly, being met with a door slammed in my face after having someone commit a crime and then telling me to file a police report doesn't really give me a lot of options to approach the scenario other than to call the police. So I'm still trying to be relatively neighborly. I decide I still want to try to talk to the husband, and a few days later, I finally get an opportunity that I happen to be in my driveway at the same time that he was, so I have a chance to go over and talk to him. Now, because this was a little unplanned, I didn't have time to manually set my security cameras to record, so I do not have the full audio of this conversation, but from my perspective, he probably can't be more volatile about handling the situation than his wife was, so I was thinking it probably can't be that bad. But evidently, that was wishful thinking. Now, like I said, these are relatively new neighbors. This is the first time I've ever interacted with that husband. So I go over to introduce myself and talk to him, and the first words out of his mouth, the very first words on our first ever interaction were this. Oh, white guy calling the cops and the colored neighbors, huh? That's right, the very first thing this guy does is call me a racist. But hey, from his part, that's probably a fair assumption because he can obviously assume that kind of thing about me because of my race. See what I did there? But by him opening with that line, I had a pretty good idea of how this conversation was going to go and the fact that they were going to have zero accountability for their actions. But I effectively told him the same thing I told his wife, which is if you want to set off fireworks, genuinely, I don't care, just give me the opportunity to move my car so that you don't damage my property. Because legitimately, that is the only thing I want in this scenario. I should say other than, of course, my local KKK tribe moving their meetings to Thursday nights because I'm a racist now when Thursday just happens to work better with my schedule. Life has this incredible ability to test your patience the most when you finally think you've settled into some semblance of calm. Because I don't know about you, but personally, when I see sparks flying overhead as embers are settling down on the car that I just spent hours cleaning, that doesn't exactly bring out my inner calm. But still, I try to approach them with a level of respect and courtesy which was, quite frankly, never shown to me. And beyond that, for some reason that still escapes me to this day, they decide to label me very unfittingly as a racist. There are people in this world who are just genuinely not good people. And while it's a very unfortunate reality, it is still a reality nonetheless. But being right and doing the right thing, that's not about winning an argument. It's not about who can yell the loudest, or throw the most daggers, or even who can slam the door closest to their neighbor's face. What it's really about is keeping your integrity when it would be easier to explode. It's about knowing who you are as a person so well that no false label could ever stick to you. Because true strength isn't in how loud you react to something, it's measured by how stable that you can stand when the world tries to shake you. At the end of the day, the fireworks are going to fade, the smoke is going to clear, but your character, your actions, the decisions you make in those critical moments, those are what will define you as a person, and those are the things that will stand the test of time. That is ultimately what people are going to remember. And all you have to do is be good to those people around you. So be kind to others and don't make yourself the villain in somebody else's story. And with that, thanks for watching.